you look over any Victorian era adverts or reverse glass pieces, you're likely to see scroll work. It's a really ornate kind of leaf. Some people call it acanthus leaf, some people call it filigree. I'll refer to it as scroll work. Now, it's a beautiful element of any design, and as such, I wanted to add it to mine when I first started this. When I did that, I wasn't successful. And the reason is this scroll work has an anatomy, a sort of rule set to how you draw it. And that's what I'm going to go through in today's video. But before we crack on with that, if you're a fan of reverse glass, Victorian techniques, gold leaf, digital processes and much more, then you're in the right place, because that's all this channel's about. And I'll try to release a video every couple of weeks. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description. I reward my patrons with a different vector design every month, early releases to the video, I credit them in the video, also upload little bits and bobs here and there to the Patreon page. If that seems a bit too much of a commitment and you just fancy buying me a pint, there's always the YouTube super thanks button, and I'm always really thankful when people use it. There's also a link to my Etsy shop in the description where I'm selling some of my designs, and the Facebook group where there's 600 people now all helping each other out, sharing work, techniques, ideas. Really good place to be. Anyway, that out of the way, let's crack on with it. Okay, so the kind of backbone to any scroll is a spiral. And I just want to make sure that I'm clear that this spiral has to be not massively accurate, but there is a kind of a rule to it. And that is that as it kind of goes around, the kind of gap in here narrows as it comes around. So say starting from here, being your widest, as that comes around, this needs to kind of just get narrower as it goes around to this final point. This point doesn't have to finish here, but the ones I'm going to be drawing will use this as a sort of finishing point. So what I'm going to be doing is building this scroll up. Now, I won't be drawing live because my hands are so shaky. I'm just terrible with stuff like that. So I'm going to be showing it as a build-up in between me kind of adding the different elements. And those different elements, so I'll start with one here. Three different types of leaf. So if we look at this leaf here, really simple, just curls like that, and then you can add this kind of extra little bit of leaf on the edge. But that's really just one shape. What we want to be doing is making sure that this part of the leaf doesn't quite touch the area where it's going to be kind of close to. It doesn't matter if it does. It's just that when we vectorize these and maybe make them into solid shapes, it will look a lot nicer if there is a little gap between where the leaf curls around and where this other sort of individual leaf sits. So that very basic leaf, you can do the whole scroll with all of these. It doesn't matter. It will look really nice. But I'm going to show you three because it's nice to kind of mix them up. So the next one is this. And this, in the same way as this one, it's this part here that needs to be, just nearly touching this section of the leaf as it comes around. If this leaf's going to come up, if you're going to start with this leaf, you'd come up, bring in this bit here, and then it's the main bit that would nearly intersect with the leaf. Yeah, just like that. As you can see, my hand's terribly shaky, so I'm not going to do this live, but I will add the first leaf after I've just shown you this last one. And that's the last one. So very similar to this. You're just doing a kind of half moon shape, but then just adding this extra little bit, which does actually bring it out a little bit wider. So if you see this sort of coming around here, this bit is sticking out, whereas on this one, this is sort of following all the way around, and this bit's just a little addition. So that is our starting point. What I'm going to do now is draw the first leaf. Okay, so I've drawn the first leaf, and I've gone with probably the most complex one, albeit it's still quite easy. And the one thing to know when you're doing this is the kind of flow of all of these angles. So if you see, I've come from the point where this starts and sort of followed that all the way around, so don't draw these leaves when you come in and then do them coming straight down to here. The same with all of the kind of sort of folds of the leaves. They're all sort of growing from one point naturally. So this curve here, is going to come back round if you follow it like this. Even this one, could be something that kind of naturally will fold over and then come back down to here. Might do a little bit of line shading on these later as well. But for now, it's kind of just making sure that this looks really organic in the way it all comes around. So the next leaf I'm going to go for is this one, and it'll be the same thing, and that is the curve nearly hitting the spiral. But then as this part of it comes down, that's going to come down into this like that, not sort of just stopping here. So I'll just draw that and then crack on with it. Okay, so you can see now I've added the second leaf, which is this one here, and hopefully you can see it all coming together now. Now I'm not just going to keep stopping the camera every time I add a different leaf. I'll add a few more leaves, and then this bit's where we want to stop and sort of, figure out what we're going to do with this, because there's a difference between drawing scrolls for kind of engraving and then drawing scrolls where you're going to use the kind of outline of them as a template, a vector template for something, for glue chipping or something like that. So I want to cover both, but for now, what I'm going to do before I add these extra leaves before we get to the center is kind of cover a kind of shading method. Now, what we want to be doing is from the bottom of each leaf and the top of each leaf, just start doing some lines that follow the natural flow of that leaf. So if I start here, I'm going to go up the middle, and I'm not going to go right to the top. I'm just going to kind of go somewhere like there, and that line will sort of form the basis of the others that I'm going to do. These can be used for, the drawing scrolls for almost an engraving template, and also, we can simplify these in a vector form. So that one is going to be the sort of one which would run up the middle, and then just going from that center point, I'm just going to start doing a few more of these coming out here that follow the shape of this leaf. And again, not right up there, just a few going up. So something like that. And then I'm going to do a similar thing from the top, starting at the point of the leaf. Just going to go where that center one would have gone, which is about there. And then kind of going out from that center point, just kind of do a few which will naturally sort of follow the shape of the leaf. Sorry, I said I wasn't going to do kind of live drawing because of my shaky hands, and you can see why now. I'm going to do a similar sort of thing on these leaves here, sort of making sure it's natural the way the kind of contours are flowing. So, well, not contours, kind of almost the veins of the leaf, if that's what they're called. Right, so that is the start of shading. Now, obviously, that's just showing you the kind of shape of that leaf and the kind of, the grain of it. But to add an extra element, you can go across, and this is kind of like cross hatching. So if you're not familiar with the concept of cross hatching, it's kind of just doing lines and then spreading them further and further apart, and then kind of going across the opposite direction and doing the same thing. I'll try and do an example, but I did just try. You might see where I've rubbed that out because I am not doing very well with this live drawing. So see, lines getting further and further apart, and then something similar. Let me just turn this around a little bit just so that I can actually draw. That is sort of the concept. So just get this back in the center, and using this, I've got these lines which are getting further apart as they go from the center, and I'm just going to do some lines across them as well that also get further and further apart. from the base. So something like that. Let's do the same on this one here. So starting tight, getting further apart. Same here. And following it around almost like the same angle. So something like that for the shading on the leaves. Now what I'm going to do is the same thing for this. So I'm going to be coming up from this point here, you know, and then following a line which would likely end here. So you want to think that your line is like that. So coming up here, that's fine. And the one from the center of this would kind of go like that. And remember, when we're doing these, you know, I'm not going to vectorize all these curves. What I might vectorize is, I don't know, 3 sort of points like that going up these. But again, you know, this doesn't have to be used for reverse glass. It can be used for engraving, can just be used for drawing, in which case, you know, the more detail, the better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add extra leaves. I'm going to shade them similar to this. And that'll be done next time I switch camera views. And then we'll just focus on this center element and how we're going to finish that up. Okay, so there's the 3 leaves. I've duplicated the first one, done the shading. Might have gone a bit overkill on these kind of tips of the leaves. I mean, really, it's much nicer if you can do the majority of the kind of shading coming up from where they start. So this is the first one anyway. Just want to introduce you to a kind of basic scroll. But I think when I do the more advanced one next, I'll sort out the shading. So anyway, what I've got here is the end point of this. And what I want to do with that, and specifically because I want these to be for reverse glass. Now, I'm choosing pointed leaves. These aren't all the leaves you can use. Sometimes they're nicer where they're sort of, you know, instead of this point here, you'd have a leaf that comes up and is actually sort of rounded. But I really only want the silhouette of them. So I'm going to start with the finishing point of this spiral. And I think I've gone a bit far because I only want this to kind of be, yeah, not sort of curling back up on itself. So I'll just kind of rub that out. Or erase it. Have to be careful. These are called rubbers in England. And what I'm going to do is sort of like what I have been doing, but kind of keep this really big and sort of chunky. So I've got a point here. Just going to kind of bring that round like that. And then kind of taper that down, as I have been with the other leaves. So something like that. But what I'm going to do is just add a little kind of, I don't know, maybe a thumb is the wrong word, but just a tiny little bit like that. And that looks, you know, that's then your kind of, sort of these parts of the leaf, I suppose. Sorry, I don't know the sort of correct anatomy for a leaf, what the anatomical terms are. So I'm just going to bring that around like this. But what I'm also going to do, just so that there's a little bit of kind of dimension to it, is bring a second line exactly from this point and kind of bring that round. That's a little bit crap, but bring it around like that. Then that looks like that leaf is kind of twisted around, you know, and then what I can do is add that sort of shading as this one is coming up here, do the same coming out from here, so the nice lines coming round. some lines where this little sort of thumb part's going to come round. I won't do the shading sort of as a live drawing because, again, it's a little bit annoying with my shaky hands. What I want to do is just put some leaves on the outside, and this is a lot easier. It's just a kind of repetitive leaf pattern. What I'm going to do, coming from the bottom point here, is just sort of follow the spiral around, and then I'm going to come out like that. Something like that. And what I'm going to do, not specifically matching up with all the other leaves, I'm just going to do this all the way round till I probably get to about here. So just coming up out of that one. Yeah, and I think that looks okay. So what I'll do is I'll just finish up the shading and show you this as a finished piece. Then I'm going to move on to some more advanced leaves. Now, I say advanced, it's just a few things where you can make them look nicer from folding over, and also how we can then start extending this so that it's just not just one kind of element of a plant. So let's come back when this is finished. Right, so there it is finished, all shaded, and the shading is obviously decent for drawing and engraving, but ideally this is something that all we're going to do is trace around in Photoshop to make a vector shape. But it's there if you need it. So that's the very basic scroll. And I mean, there isn't much difference between a basic scroll and a more advanced one, and it's just a few little additional touches that can make it just look that extra bit special, I suppose. And what they are is, looking at these leaves that we've done, they're good, but they're pretty basic, and I don't want to change too much about them. But what you can do is what we'll call sort of foldovers. So let me just slide this in, get this centered. And these are the leaves we've done already. You might even be able to see that was just a curve that came around there. And all I've done is kind of rubbed that area out and then just added a sort of, a little fold over leaf that starts at the point where that little bit sticks out. Same with this one, just kind of erased the tip and had a little sort of fold over piece here. And then with these, just added a sort of little bit that almost looks like it's curling in on itself. These so easy to do, and you can just kind of, do your shading so it comes from underneath these points, just to kind of really, accentuate the sort of foldovers and make it sort of cast a shadow as it would. So it's just, that's terrible, but there you go. And same with these here. You'd be sort of bringing the shading down from here, still following the shape of the leaf. And things like that. Now, this isn't all of the foldovers you can do. These little bits here also work on the curved leaf. So if I just bring this back in and show you, that can have something that's sort of, coming around here. And that can be the kind of fold over for that coming from the corner. It's there's loads of variations. I'm just going to stick with those few. And then what I'm going to do is move on to, let's just move these out of the way, this here. Now, what I've done is traced the last one that I did, but what I'm going to do is add these nice foldovers to these leaves instead. You can see I've added an extra spiral here, which is going to be a continuation same kind of thing, adding the same type of leaves going around, adding the same kind of outer leaves where necessary. And it's just kind of showing you how these things can build up. Now, it doesn't have to stem out from here. You know, you could have another one coming out from here, from wherever. And they don't obviously have to start as one thing. You know, if you had this one and it looked nice, then you can have another one coming in from, you know, starting from a different point. What I'm going to do is just alter these leaves to sort of give it those really nice kind of fold overs. And now look just a bit nicer than the scroll that we'd done before. So I'll start with this one. So same with this, I'm going to do a similar kind of fold over on this one, because I think that'll look nice on here. So I'm going to start at the corner, bring that around. Bring that in. We can do the kind of more of a sort of top fold over rather than it curling in from the sides here. So that would be, you know, something like this. And just erase this little bit here, just so that I can kind of have a bit more, you know, of a hard stop where this bit folds over. And then I think on this one I'll go with a kind of fold over on the tip of the leaf. So that's, well, go down this back tip here, which something like that. And, you know, I think that's looking really nice. I think those little elements will just add that extra sort of finishing touch to make it, well, just a little bit more flamboyant than the last one. What I'm going to do is add the same leaves, some different fold overs to this element here. But what I would do is add something that separates these two here. So I want to kind of, where these two spirals go out, I'm just going to add a kind of leaf element in here. So just so something like that. And I would be using the same shading techniques coming up, you know, trying to follow the sort of natural sort of pattern of these, like where they're going to go, where the sort of center is of each of these leaves, and kind of shade this coming from the outside, coming from the bottom of the spiral and then cross hatching that all the way up. So I'll just stop this, add the extra leaves and all of the component parts, and then show you what that looks like. Right, so here it is. I've just kind of done all of the outlines, filled them in nice and dark with a 2B pencil. And you can see all I'm doing is duplicating the same things from this side onto this side. So it's the same shapes of leaves, same type of kind of fold overs with the leaves, the same leaves on the outside as well. And you can see, I think even at this stage, it looks, you know, much more attractive than the previous one that I did. So what I'm going to do is I'll switch this to a time lapse to do the shading, but it's all going to be the same principle, you know, which is, you know, anything which is obviously going in the kind of lines that follow the contours of a leaf, but also maybe just making things a little bit darker where these fold overs are, you know, so where these kind of lines would go up here, probably making sure that we do a lot more around these areas where they would actually be cast in a shadow. But yeah, I'll do that in the time lapse and yeah, see how it looks at the end. And that's going to be it for this video. Part 2, I'm going to move into the digital side of it, where we vectorize each leaf, creating custom shapes and making a collection where we can just create different leaves each time using our shape tool. But that's for next time. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe to the channel and click the little thumbs up icon, and please share the video with anyone else who you think might enjoy it. So till next time, cheers.